This is Rudy.
This is Flick.
And we are up to episode 49, the big 49. And we have a very big episode this week on the Left of the Dial pod. We're going to do I'm Going to Make You Love Me. And again, like our last artist we covered was Big Star on episodes 47 and 48. I can't believe we made it an entire year without talking about Big Star. Even more surprising, we made it an entire year without doing a show about Bob Mould or Husker Du. I can't believe it, but we're finally going to talk a little Bob Mould today on an I'm Going to Make You Love Me episode. It's very exciting. I'm very excited. How about you, Mr. Flick? You excited to get some Bob Mould going?
Yeah, well, and this is certainly a long time in the making because I have known for quite a while when we started doing this format, the I'm Going to Make You Love Me format, that was going to be my opportunity to get you to do like a thorough dive into Copper Blue. So I'm very happy to finally get to do that. Yeah,
it definitely. I am enjoying our switch from the format of trying to make someone like the band to making someone like an album. This format switch is really working for me. I am excited to talk Copper Blue today. I pulled one out of left field. I got to be honest, it's because we were talking about the Big Star and we got to talking about the Bangles and their cover of September Girls. It reminded me of how much I liked Hoodoo Gurus. Hoodoo Gurus was kind of hanging around the Bangles. I think they were their opening act at that time. So I gave you a Hoodoo Gurus album that I dig. I gave you Mars Needs Guitars, I think from like 84 or 85, somewhere in there. So we're going back to the 20th century today, but I think we've got some good stuff on board. We're also going to talk a little bit of current events and new music as well.
Yeah, and you know, unfortunately, as things have gone a lot in 2020, I'm not sure if anybody is having a good year. If you are, congratulations, because you've really beat the odds. 2020 has not been, there has not been much good news to speak of in the year. Certainly no exception. We had a couple of deaths in the past week, and the one that I want to talk about first is actor Chadwick Boseman. And you know, you might wonder why we're talking about an actor on a music show, but you know, one, I mean, he was a very special actor, but you know, the main reason why I think he fits into our context here is, you know, he was James Brown. He was James Brown in Get On Up, and when we were still doing our intro to the show, we'll have to figure out a new intro at some point, but up till recently, we've been doing an intro where one of the featured sound bites on it is James Brown, Chadwick Boseman as James Brown in the movie, doing one of my favorite scenes and my favorite monologues about music. You know, where he talks to the band leader of the JBs, you know, about how just because something doesn't fit into the normal rules of music as we know them, if it sounds good to your ear, then it's musical, you know. And so I always really loved that scene and felt like it was something that needed to be in our intro.
Yeah, I don't want to overstate the case because I don't watch a ton of movies, but I've seen enough of his work. The range he had as an actor, I mean, just to have Jackie Robinson and James Brown within the range of what your skills can do, and then to be able to take on and carry such a huge film like Black Panther. And It's not that he carried it alone, but to that is I mean, again, I'm not an actor, but I'm guessing that's an actor's actor there. Mm-hmm. There's the range of what this guy was able to, and just to command the screen in such different ways over multiple, you know, film genres, biopics, and then comic, you know, the comic book stuff too. It's pretty amazing, and he's pretty. I can't, you know, again, I'm not an acting coach. I did a bad job in our high school production of Our Town. I'm certainly not an expert on the topic, but I know what I like, and I just his ability and his range is the range of the word that keeps coming to my mind. It's just his ability to be a master of so many different things is something that very few people pull off.
Yeah, he had range. And he would disappear into the role. Like, when he was playing Jackie Robinson, you're just thinking that's Jackie Robinson. You weren't thinking that's Chadwick Boseman.
Yeah.
James Brown, I think, is especially difficult. James Brown is somebody who is a very singular personality in American history.
Mm-hmm.
Not somebody that that is easily attainable, I think, as somebody to emulate. But then, on top of being able to emulate him, what Boseman did in the movie was really made him fully dimensional. And it isn't enough to just do a good imitation of James Brown, which is a strong enough feat, but there's so much more to be done, and he did that. And I think that that might be the big performance, if there's one to pull out for me, is the job that he did in that movie. But then you have Black Panther, and he was Black Panther in 4 movies, starting in Civil War, then taking on the lead role in Black Panther, and then the final Avengers movies, Infinity War and Endgame.
Yeah.
And like I don't know. Civil War is one of my, like, Black Panther and Civil War, I think, are 2 of the absolute best Marvel movies. And I'm a big nerd. I love the Marvel movies.
Mm-hmm.
And I love Black Panther, and I was glad that they got him, because I knew that like a lot of times blockbuster casting goes along with just getting the big name. So
Yeah.
I don't think Chadwick Boseman, I don't think, was the biggest name, but he was the best actor that they could have got. So I was really glad that was who got cast to be Black Panther, and not just whoever might have been the big name to get.
Well, speaking of him with big names, I was not surprised at all in just reading some of the stories after his death that some of his acting classes that he took as a young man were paid for by Denzel Washington. And I was not surprised to find that Denzel Washington was an active part in promoting him as a young man and helping him find his way. And I mean, I'm not an expert on acting, but I'd be surprised if anybody who understood acting wouldn't rank Denzel Washington as one of the greatest living actors on the planet today. And for Denzel Washington to be able to spot that level of talent and nurture him that way, not a surprise at all. I don't they aren't in competition with each other, and obviously Denzel Washington's career has been longer, but finding him in that company is not surprising. Like, he was an actor's actor. He was a legit, straight up actor. I admit I'm not as big on the Avengers stuff. Unfortunately, I only saw Black Panther on a screen on a flight, but I did see the last 2 Avengers franchise films in the theater, and if I would rather it be under other circumstances, but if there's another showing of Black Panther in the theaters here sometime soon, I'll don my mask and I'll socially distance, but I feel like I really got to see that one on the big screen to really understand how great it is.
Yeah, I saw it in IMAX, so I saw it on the biggest possible screen, and
Wow.
and I saw Civil War on IMAX screen too. Actually, let me see, all 4 of the Avengers, or all 4 of the Marvel movies with Black Panther, I saw on IMAX screen. So yeah, those were pretty big deals for me. Yeah, and so the sad thing is, 42, that wasn't his first movie, but that was the first movie I saw him in. That was probably the first movie that most people saw him in, unless it was maybe Black Panther or but that was just 7 years ago. So his career, unfortunately, was very much too short, and he died at 43. And of course, like we should mention that he died of colon cancer. And not many people knew that he was battling that at all and going through chemotherapy for it.
For
But
years.
what's that?
For years. He had it. I
Yeah,
think he was diagnosed and he fought it for years, and he was working the whole time.
yeah. I think it was like 4 years.
I mean, it's so sad that it's such a. He died younger than me. I'm 50, and for him to be at that age to pass away with so much talent and so much ahead of him, I want to echo your point. 2020 just sucks. It just
Yeah,
sucks.
yeah. I will be happy when we can turn the calendar on this year, and hopefully 2021 is better.
Yeah, I
Uh,
like your optimism.
yeah, but yeah, we got to get there first.
We have another bummer too this week. Another person who has passed away long before their time, who had such great art left in them. But I don't know much about Chadwick Boseman's personal life. I know a little bit more about Justin Townes Earle's personal life, and I know he had, his life. He had emotional struggles his entire life. They were. I don't want to say they were. I think he would have been a great singer and a great songwriter without them. They were definitely a part of his music, and I don't. I mean, it's a little overboard to say his performances were raw, but he. I don't think Justin Townes Earle was. I never got to see him in concert, but he was somebody who I kept an active playlist going on, and I don't want to get into like hot takes or anything, but I do feel like his career stands up pretty well against even his dad's to some degree. Like I'm not so sure that I'll put it this way: I listen to a lot more Justin Townes Earle than I listen to Steve Earle. Maybe that's just me, but I really feel like he had lots of great music left in him, and he's gone. I think he was like 38, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, 38, and we don't know the cause of death, but it's being investigated as a probable drug overdose.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, died at 38 in Nashville. And yeah. I mean, I'm probably the opposite. I'm a bit more familiar with Steve Earle than Justin Townes Earle. Uh, their relationship not always smooth for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I think even at one point, Justin Townes Earle was fired from Steve Earle's band,
Yeah.
and so yeah, I mean, definitely a rocky relationship between them, and yeah, it I don't know, it's definitely another life that's gone much too early.
Yeah. I have a little bit of experience, although a very different kind. I used fentanyl as a pain patient for years. After my spine fusion I had that didn't work, and it's not the same as being somebody who uses like street drugs or heroin or whatever. But I have experienced what what withdrawal from fentanyl feels like, and it's overwhelming. And I do understand how people who are experiencing that feeling are going to make bad decisions to make that feeling go away. And if you get into that, if that's part of your experience, like it's a very very heavy and intense thing. And I only had to taper off it once. I only had to kick the I wasn't a habit. I mean, I was using it medically because I have a broken back. But after I had a couple other surgeries, I didn't need it anymore, and I got off of it. But it's brutal. It's absolutely brutal. And I don't want to turn this into something about me, but there's sort of an image about people who die of drug overdoses that they are somehow weak, or that they somehow just weren't tough enough for the world. I think that's a misread of what's going on. In order to survive and function when you're wrestling with that, you have to be incredibly strong. And if I understand his history, like this is something that has been in and out of his life. And I was lucky. I was getting pharmaceutical grade drugs with a prescription. I didn't screw up my life. I didn't steal from my mom, or I didn't get kicked out of my dad's band. I didn't have to deal with any of that stuff that a lot of people who use illegal drugs have to deal with. Accumulating the physical problems and the emotional problems and the relationship problems around that is an incredible burden. And for those folks to make it, they have to be stronger, I think, than a lot of people do to make it. It's no failing in my experience. It's not a it's he has there's no reason to look upon any of that stuff with shame. He had a struggle. He had a very hard struggle, and he made it a good long time, and he made some beautiful music along the way. He was an incredibly talented writer, and I know that dying young and dying the way that it looks like he died, that's going to end up being what people remember and talk about, and it's really unfair. He didn't I don't know if he's first ballot covers Hall of Fame, cover artist Hall of Fame, but he's pretty close. He not only could write, but he was a master with certain covers. I put a couple up there. I know there's no way we weren't going to include Can't Hardly Wait, but I also put in his cover of Paul Simon's Graceland. I think it's fantastic. It's fantastic. And after reading a little bit more about his life, that he was sort of obsessed with the ideas of redemption and repentance and forgiveness and forgiving the people in his life and being forgiven by the people in his life. And it really changed the way I heard his cover of Graceland. So I recommend you go and just listen to it and feel it the way he's communicating it to you. There's a lot in there. He's not. I feel bad because he's young and his death is going to be associated with drugs. He's just going to sort of be written off, and people are just sort of going to reflexively, sort of look past the struggles he overcame to make it that long, given what he was dealing with. It's a bitch. It sucks. And I think the fact that he made so much good music in the life that he did have is where the energy should go, not necessarily just the sad sack stuff, which is all over the story. Don't get me wrong, but he put out more than very few people are going to make it to 40 years old putting out as much good music as he did. You know what I mean? By the time he was 38, I really feel like history is going to be very kind to him and his catalog.
Yeah, well, going back to the covers, when a cover that we talked about, at this point it's quite a while ago, but when we unfortunately, another show along the same lines when we talked about John Prine after he passed, and we did John Prine covers. Justin Townes Earle, his version of Far Far From Me, I think that was on your list, but it could have been on either one of our lists because it's another really great cover.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I'm really bummed. I'm just bummed. He was, like I said, I've never read too much about him, but I didn't hear a ton of bad things about him. Maybe I just didn't read the right stuff. It makes me kind of heartsick because I think he's another one of these guys that he had more great music in him, and I don't know if we'll get to hear it. So we have, we're up to our featured presentation.
Yeah, so I don't know who's going to go first, but just to reset, this is another edition of I'm Gonna Make You Love Me, where we sometimes do playlists of bands, kind of a compilation of songs that we like by a certain band, but we also will sometimes take a full album and exchange full albums. This week, I am giving you Copper Blue by Sugar, and Sugar, of course, was Bob Mould's post-Husker Du band in the 1990s. Copper Blue is one of my absolute favorite albums of that decade period, and really just I don't know. It's high up there all time for me.
Well, I'm going to let you go first today because, while as much as I like Hoodoo Gurus and as much as I like Mars Needs Guitars, Mars Needs Guitars is no Copper Blue. I have a feeling the bulk of our, certainly a crosstalk, is going to be very sugar-centric, so I'll leave the maximum amount of time possible for that. Let's do Hoodoo Gurus first, and then we can stretch our legs a little bit on Copper Blue, because I know just from getting warmed up today, we'll have plenty to talk about together.
Okay, yeah. So my album to listen to, given to me by you this week, is Hoodoo Gurus Mars Needs Guitars, which was released in Australia in August of 1985. So at this point, it's 35 years old.
Wow, I didn't even think about that. It does sound 35 years old in certain spots, but did any of it hold up for you, son?
Yeah, it did. And actually, I guess I'm going to correct myself. It was released in the UK in August. It was released in March of '85 in Australia. So I'll correct myself on that right away. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, this is an album that is not too difficult for me to like because it's uh, really akin to power pop and a lot of those elements, a lot of garage rock elements, some punk elements, you know, and so I got to say this. I was certainly familiar with the first track on the album, which is Bittersweet, which I think I've probably heard on a handful of compilations over the years and like that song quite a bit. Um, my first thing after listening, getting 3 or 4 tracks into this album is that this band was really kind of done a disservice by the studio. I liked the songs, but I felt like the studio treatment was sort of declawing them, and so I wanted to see if maybe I could find some live versions of the songs, and I did. They do have one live album that I could find on Spotify, which now I'm blanking on what that. Do you know what that one's called?
I'll look it up, but yeah, I don't have it, but I'll look it up. Keep going.
Okay. Well, anyway, so unfortunately, it's like an almost 3 hour set, and unfortunately, only I think one of the songs off this album is actually on that, which is like wow. I think everything else is from somewhere different, but I was correct. They are they are a great live band and kind of an okay studio band, I think. So I would really love to hear like live versions across the board of this album because I do like the songs quite a bit, but I feel like they are probably better served as live versions.
Yeah, Bite the Bullet is the name of the album, I think, that you're looking for.
Yeah, that's right. Bite the Bullet. Okay. Yeah. So the songs that I liked, let me see. I mean, Bittersweet is a great song, and of course, and as I said, I'd heard that quite a few times. Like Wow is another good one. Let's see.
Don't
Show
break
Some
my heart.
Emotion. What was
Don't
that?
break my heart. Do not break my heart. Keep going.
Okay. Well, I'm bound to break your heart. I'm just gonna.
Damn. Keep
Uh,
going.
Yeah, so I think In the Wild is another one. I'll have to take a look. I wrote them down, but
You
okay.
you are
So
gonna break my heart. I can feel it.
which one is the heartbreaking one?
Death-defying.
Death Defying?
Nothing
Yeah,
for you.
let me check. I
You
have
have
to
a bunch
refresh
of
myself.
Australian guys going, hoo-wee. I mean, what more do you want? You got
Okay.
some genuine outback hillbilly music. No,
Well,
doesn't
yeah,
make a difference.
yeah. No, I mean the whole album is definitely worthwhile. Um, Even Hayride to Hell, which is kind of a throwaway sort of thing,
Yeah.
is fun. Um, Let me see here. Yeah, Death Defying. Yeah, that is on my list.
All right,
So
great. Woo!
there you go.
We were gonna
Yeah,
have some issues if not, but the video's good too.
yeah. So Death Defying, Bittersweet, and yeah, shows some emotion. Yeah, like wow, they're good. But yeah, I am going to be tracking down some live versions of those, and I'll get back to you on that.
So one of the things I went back and listened to it too is it's definitely a product of its time. I think you're partially saying that about the production. It does sort of go into a mid '80s blender a little bit. But what's interesting is it's a short album. It's only got 10 songs on it. That's one of the things about it that I think is like most alien, is that it's really just, I don't even think the whole album is, I don't think it's even 40 minutes total in length. It's a pretty short record.
Yeah, most of the songs are about 3 minutes and 10 tracks. So, yeah, I'd say it's probably about 30 to 35 minutes total.
Yeah, somewhere in there. 10 songs, 30, let's say 33 minutes. They did have a couple of singles on it, but again, it does definitely, to your point, and I never thought about it that way, it does feel like it's a managed record company product. Their first album was on A&M, Stone Age Romeos, which is okay. But then this was their big major label debut in the U.S. was on Elektra. This was it. I don't know how they got signed, but it definitely feels like managed product to some extent. And if the songs weren't there, and I think at least half of them are pretty damn good songs, I just don't think it. I don't know if there's anything to care about.
Yeah, I mean that is the thing. You know, I could immediately hear that the songs were there, but it just felt like it felt a little bit chained to the floor, you know, and I mean I was right when you hear what they sound like live. They are very good live, and they're much better, and they do interesting covers too, and yeah, they did a Velvet Underground cover, and in the I think David Faulkner was the lead singer. I think he was doing the vocal, and he was doing like a spot on Lou Reed, which, you know, normally I'm going to say, you know, why not be content to sound like yourself? But when it's Lou, I'll accept it. And they do there are some Ramones covers on that that are pretty good. There's a version of this album with bonus tracks, and one of them is a cover of the Flamin' Groovies' Teenage Head, which is another one I got to track down because that's not on Spotify. But they have good choices in covers, and the energy level of their live performances is not even, it's off the charts compared to, you know, what it sounds like on the studio versions here.
So I didn't get to see them at that time, but I have heard some of their live stuff, and they were always famous for being a great live band. And I think they're much bigger in Australia than they are here. Like, to me, the next album, Blow Your Cool, that had some singles. The local radio station in Iowa did play Good Times, which I think had the Bangles on background vocals. And then like Miss Free Love 69, I know got some play on MTV. And then after that, I didn't hear about them too much more. I wish I had seen them, but the night they came to Iowa when they were opening for the Bengals, I had to do the closing shift at the Hardee's in Marion, and I couldn't go. It's a real bummer. That's a pisser, man. I missed Echo and the Bunnymen with Screaming Blue Messiahs opening up for the same reason. Like I had to clean the fry pit and stuff instead. That's just it's just the way the cookie crumbles. How often does the Hoodoo Gurus come to the middle of Iowa? Like, never. I had my chance and I didn't see them, and it's probably past their prime now. What can you say? Although, Dave Faulkner, do you watch? Do you happen to watch the show What We Do in the Shadows?
Yeah, I'm behind, but
all right. Well, Dave Faulkner is starting to look a lot like Colin Robinson, like the Australian Colin Robinson. It concerns me because Dave Faulkner's a cool guy. Although I guess Colin Robinson in his own way is too. Anyway, I don't know why I went down that path. Well, I'm glad I was a little worried on this one. I did skew my Hoodoo Gurus pick a little bit. Again, to call that album having like a country edge to it is wrong. But there are a couple moments there that feel a little high and lonesome, which they didn't really do elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's you know, it's definitely not it's definitely not George Jones or anything like that. But yeah, I mean they're a blender of a lot of different influences for sure, and a lot of good influences, which is the important part. But yeah, I mean it's I think if you go back and listen to it again, um, as if you haven't listened to it a lot more than I haven't, obviously. But I will say the song Poison Pen is, I think, where you would listen to something and say, this sounds like a song that would be completely different on stage than it is in the studio.
Yeah.
That I think is really where that seed was planted in my head when I was listening to this.
I can't argue with that. I do think probably a live recording from that era would put the album to shame in some respects, and that's probably why it hasn't been done, to be honest. I'm guessing that's why we won't hear that, is because you're right.
Well,
what are you going to do?
I mean, I think, I don't know. It seems to me incentive to actually do it. It's like, it's Cheap Trick at Budokan. A lot of those songs were not three-dimensional until that album came out.
Yeah, that's an interesting comparison. Because in their own weird way, the Hoodoo Gurus do have like a little bit of a power pop sensibility. Clearly,
Right.
I think you and I both could have a good afternoon bumming through their record collections. I think we would be like, oh, I thought I was the only one who liked this. And I have a feeling they go deep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hooray, this pleases me. Again, I did hedge a little bit here, and I gave you one of the albums that I think is probably their most consistent. And I'm not as big on their like the surf influence stuff and the garagey stuff. I think you sort of hit on it too. Is a band like this, they clearly have more than one trick up their sleeve. They're clearly fluent in lots of the sort of building blocks of rock and roll life. And they do have the songcraft there. I wish they'd broken through and gotten a little bigger. I'm not sure they ever just had that knockdown single that was irresistible. I don't know if they were even trying, but that pleases me that you dig it. Hooray. Maybe the album format's a little easier than the band format. Who knows?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, possibly.
We're gonna find out. All right, well, I'm going to count that as a victory. Maybe it's a 2020 thing. I'll take anything positive and I'll inflate it into a massive victory. It's time for us to finally talk some Bob Mould. And I thought for sure we would end up talking Husker Du first, but that's just not how it happened. And I should have known it was not going to happen that way because I'm doing the podcast with you. And that means it was going to be Sugar's Copper Blue. And
Yeah, and we should explain that. That's not that I don't love Husker Du.
No, please do.
But Copper Blue is an album that is my favorite Bob Mould album of all time. And I think there's somebody that agrees with me on that, and I think his name is Bob Mould. I did at one time, actually talk to him about that, and he seemed very pleased that I told him that was my favorite album by him, and he happily agreed with me that is his best one.
Yeah, I mean, certainly of his non-Husker Du career, I don't think anybody sane could argue that. If you wanted to talk his entire career, where do you put it next to Zen Arcade?
I mean, I put it first. I think it's the best one. Zen Arcade. Zen Arcade might be the best Husker Du album, but Flip Your Wig is actually my favorite one.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'll go along with Zen Arcade as being the best Husker Du album. So yeah, I'd put that second, and then I don't know. I don't really know what comes next. There's probably a few contenders for the next spot. I mean, I guess I'd put Flip Your Wig in the third spot because that's my favorite Husker Du album. But yeah.
Well, look, I can dispense with the pleasantries here. I do remember the album very well. I was working at a college radio station in 1992, and that album was played on like every shift, and the shifts were like 3-hour, 4-hour shifts. Sugar was being played on the student radio station at the University of Iowa, I think 4 or 5 times a day, easy, probably closer to like 6 and 7. And I don't know that I ever tired of it, but I know that I felt like I eventually felt like I got my fill of it, and I took a break from it for a while, and I pull it out every once in a while. I want to, before I go into it, I mean, again, it's a nearly perfect album. I've never disliked it, but I will admit I never quite saw it as the masterpiece that you see it as, and I'm getting close. I put it at like a 9 on a scale of 10. It's um, we do go back to some of the same things over and over again, but I think these are the bedrock important things. The songcraft on Copper Blue is unimpeachable. It's all killer, no filler, pretty much end to end. There's not a dud on it. There's not a dud. So and you'll know more of the history than me, but I think what I read is he had 30 songs prepared for this project, some of which came out as B-sides and some of which came out as an EP. So a huge number of songs from that era were actually recorded and actually released, and the entire batch is top shelf stuff. I don't think File Under Easy Listening is all that great. It has moments. I actually, if you told me I could only pick between File Under Easy Listening and Beaster, I'd take Beaster. But obviously, you don't agree, or do you agree?
Well, I think File Under Easy Listening is pretty good. It's not Copper Blue good. I think I'll take it over Beaster.
Oh,
Beaster, I think JC Otto is pretty good, but I don't know. I'm not too partial to it otherwise.
So my recollections of that album, the only little thing at the time which I need to undo is I really liked the singles from his first couple solo records. So I think the first one is Workbook. I don't know how long that after the last Husker Du record Workbook came out, but I think Black Sheets of Rain came out right after it. The singles I remember are It's Too Late from Black Sheets of Rain and See a Little Light. See a Little Light might be my favorite solo Bob Mould song. I realize that's a little bit chintzy because he has such a huge career, and I basically picked his first single. But See a Little Light, just in terms of songcraft, like is just off the charts good. It's endlessly rewarding listening. I've listened to it on and off now for literally like 35 years or 30 years. You know, I've literally been listening to that song for 30 years. I have never tired of it. And I remember It's Too Late being great too. And I remember It's Too Late feeling like that could have been a great Husker Du song. And at that time, 89, 1990, I was still sort of listening for, well, you know, is this just going to be Husker Du but softer? And that's not really what he was about at that time. And I do think Copper Blue, though, is the first real expression of Bob Mould, even though it's not done under his name. Like, that album is the total package from him. The songwriting, the arrangements, even lyrically, I think it's among his better things. Like, he just didn't miss. It just, there's no misses really on it.
So the songs are there, you know, like I think Workbook and Black Sheets of Rain have their standout songs. Copper Blue is, you know, as you've already stated, is end to end great. But yeah, the songs are there, and sonically, I don't really think it's ever been better either. I think everything about the way that this is engineered is perfect. You know, Bob's guitar and vocals have never sounded better. It's just, you know, it's hitting on all cylinders.
It also doesn't hurt, and I know this is not a story anybody cares about anymore, but that album was released on Rykodisc Records. Rykodisc CDs, I think, to this day, like a lot of those first-generation compact discs from the late 80s and 90s sound like crap, but nothing on Rykodisc really did. Like, I don't know, I mean, I don't remember if that was out on vinyl at the time. I don't think I ever heard an original vinyl pressing of Copper Blue. But I'd be surprised if that sucked too. I would be surprised if that sucked because they put out such good stuff back then. Rykodisc did.
Yeah, I don't think there was the vinyl option when it was a Rykodisc release.
Wow. So has that changed? Can you get it on vinyl now? Can you get Copper Blue?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, now it's handled by Merge, I think, and somebody else put it out. It's been out on vinyl 2 different times. In like the last 10 years, maybe. Well, yeah, I'd have to go back and see who did it first. Most recently, though, it's Merge.
Okay. Well, look, I'm glad you picked this for me. It was a joy to listen to. I remember that I pretty much knew every one of these songs. I haven't gone back to it in a while. I wonder why this album wasn't much bigger. I read an article where Bob Mould himself said like he expected Nirvana's Nevermind to sort of clear a path for him, and this really was going to be like a big jump into sort of mainstream alternative music. And at the time, that's what it was. I mean, after Nevermind, an album like Copper Blue should have been a mainstream success. And did it ever get on? I mean, I know it was on WXRT in Chicago. Did it ever get on to the other stations? I don't remember it being like a super huge commercial breakthrough. Am I wrong about that? Was it a big seller?
No, I don't think it was a big seller, but
handle.
But If I Can't Change Your Mind has been a constant on like XRT in Chicago to this day, and I'm sure it is on various radio stations. I don't really keep up with that so much.
I do have 3 hot takes, and it wouldn't be us, Mr. Flick, if I didn't have some area where we both like the same album, but for some reason there's something to disagree about. I apologize in advance. Okay. 1, there were 4 singles released off this album, and If I Can't Change Your Mind was the 4th. Come on. Really? That's not the first single? If I had to guess as to why the album didn't break through and sell, it's because they didn't put out If I Can't Change Your Mind as their first single. And having gone back to that, go ahead. Okay,
so I'll say this about that. It's the only video I remember them doing of this album. I'm probably wrong about that. It might have been the 4th single, but I think it was the first video off of it.
Okay.
And I don't know how they justify so actually, I guess it depends on what country you're looking at too, because in the UK, it was the 3rd single.
Okay, well, I'm going to stick to my point on that, which is it should have been the first single. And now here's I apologize in advance. I'm not trying to poke the bear here, but on that Merge reissue is an alternate version of it. It's called the solo mix of If I Can't Change Your Mind. And it almost starts off like it's acoustic. Like the drums aren't even in that. I don't even think they're in the first verse. And again, it's not revelatory. It's not like a fundamentally different song or anything, but I have to say it's a little sweeter in my ear. And I think that the subtlety of that version might have been the better version to put out. I'm just saying, I could be wrong, but if you're going to dig the album, if you haven't listened to Copper Blue, you got to listen to just the original version. I think it's 10 songs long as well, if I'm not mistaken. But then you do have to go to that 2012 reissue and catch all the B-sides, and that solo mix, If I Can't Change Your Mind, is hot. That's great, man. That's great. I wish that had been the original.
So something about the B-sides, back then that was the time where a lot of those B-sides you would have to get the import singles to get, and so I still have all of the import singles from this and from File Under Easy Listening that I had to make the extra effort to track down all of those imports.
So do you know if there's any vault material left from that band? Is there any stuff that's no one's heard?
I don't know. I'm going to guess there probably is. There's just always something somewhere that hasn't been released.
Was there ever a discussion of getting back together? Was there ever any talk about a 3rd Sugar album?
So I don't think that would happen at this point, because I think right now Bob Mould's band, I think he really loves the band that he has, which is John Worster on drums and Jason Arducci on bass, and I think, I don't know, I've really liked the music that he's done since he brought on those guys, and I think they kind of bring out the best in him and inspire him a bit. So I don't think you would probably go back to Sugar at this point. I don't.
No reason.
I know that he and the drum. I shouldn't say I know, because I'm piecing together the fragments in my mind now of what I do know. I think there was quite a disagreement though between him and the drummer Malcolm Travis. So I don't think that was like David Barbie was the bass player in Sugar, and I think that was amicable, but I don't think it was so amicable between him and Malcolm Travis. So I don't see it happening.
I only mention it because there is definitely a song structure in the Sugar record that is different than his other stuff. Like, it's not just a Bob Mould solo album. I mean, it is kind of, in the sense that he's not the only songwriter, but clearly Sugar represents his vision. But I do think that, like, particularly with Copper Blue, that is a batch of songs that would not have made great Husker Du songs per se. I'm not sure that they would have been any better as Bob Mould solo records. Like, there is something, he needed a new band. Like, it's a band record. At least it sounds that way to me. It's its own thing. All right, here's the hot take, and we have to do this. We talked before the show, and the Act We Act, you think, is one of the great kickoff songs on any album of all time.
Yeah,
and
well,
if I had,
let me express that.
All right, you do that. But all I'm saying is it's the only thing on there that I thought I might not have kicked off the album with it.
Okay, well, to me, I think it's one of the all-time best side one, track ones. It's definitely up there all time for me. And that's another thing where, I haven't actually, this wasn't something I discussed with Bob Mould when I talked to him, and I don't mean to name drop him that way, but anyway, I think that's also an agreement, because he has over the years often started his sets with that. So a lot of the Sugar sets started off with that song. Most of the solo songs in the past 10 years that I've seen him do, he started off with the Act We Act. So I think he also sees that as like his ultimate kickoff song as well.
Yeah, I'm probably just wrong, but
and the thing about it is what I think is so great about it is that song, when it comes on, just kicks you right in the face. It just, the power that comes in with on just the intro, with the guitar and then the sound of the drums. Again, I love the way this album was engineered, and the drums sound so perfect when it comes in on the intro there. I don't know. To me, it's just one of those grab you by the throat sort of songs, and that's why I think it's just perfect to lead off the album and most of his sets.
Well, the deluxe edition from 2012 does have a live set, and it's pretty faithful to the Copper Blue album or running order, and I will say, it is great in the live context. So maybe I'll give it a try. So you saw Sugar, right?
Yeah. So actually the show that was recorded for that, unless that's different, but this goes back to Ryko Disc. Ryko Disc put out this live set as they had a compilation of Sugar B-sides way back in I think it was still the 90s, and put out that live set as an extra on that. And I went to that show. That was on the File Under Easy listening tour when they were at First Avenue in Minneapolis. And the thing I remember, so the song The Slim, which is track 6 on Copper Blue, there was a point where, like, that song is really emotionally intense. And there was a point where it was kind of at that peak of that emotional intensity, and his guitar started feeding back from his mic stand, and he was so into it that he just like hauled off and kicked the mic stand, and it let out this shriek when it hit the stage, and it was so loud, And I remember when I saw that Ryko disc had put that live set out, and I couldn't wait to hear what that sounded like on the live recording. And because they have the access to just do whatever they want, with overdubs and whatever, they took that out. It is not in there.
Ooh.
So to me, like, one of the most just like one of those situations where just my eyes were just glued to the stage, and it was just that sort of locked in sort of moment. It's not something you can really hear on the live recording, unfortunately.
I've only ever been at one show that ever came out, and I don't have a story that good, but there were I went to a They Might Be Giants show at Tramps in New York that they did the Planet of the Apes theme, and the crowd, we were directed to sing, and I can't hear my own voice naturally, but my story is not as cool as yours. I got to be a bit player on a They Might Be Giants live extra track, and you got to be at a pivotal moment. What was the Sugar Show like? Was there people yelling Husker Du song titles and shit? Was it a bunch of like drunken people wearing flannel, yelling New Day Rising at him for an hour?
So Bob Mould show, whether it's Sugar solo or whatever, it's so loud you can anybody other than the band. So yeah, I mean it's what it's like. It's extremely loud, and it and I was a kid then, and I didn't. It was like the first time that I'd ever made a conscious decision to bring earplugs to a show, because I knew it was going to be that loud. But that's how much louder it was than any other show I'd ever attended. And, to this day, like, the loudest shows I've ever been to are that one, My Bloody Valentine, and actually Courtney Barnett. Those are far and away like the loudest shows I've ever.
Wait, Courtney Barnett is loud?
Courtney Barnett's super loud, yeah.
Oh no, that guitar solo in Avant Gardener must be very painful to listen to then.
Yeah, I mean it's I don't know. I somehow I knew that was going to be, although that's more recent, and I've gotten really protective of my ears, so maybe I was just prepared for any show when I saw her. But yeah, that was a really loud one.
Did he was he doing any Husker Du stuff during the Sugar tour at all?
No, he didn't do any. I keep on checking myself to see if I've forgotten, but I don't think he did any Husker Du show songs at all in that set.
All right, last question. I'm sorry to interrogate you. What's your favorite? Did you ever get to see Husker Du? You'd have been a very young kid, probably.
No, I never did. The Sugar Show was the first time I ever saw Bob Mould.
And where do you rank it in your Bob Mould shows?
That was it was the first one, so it's pretty important. I've seen him quite a few times now, at this point, and I've seen him do a show just by himself, and I've seen him do a lot of shows with Worcester and Narduzzi. But yeah, I mean, that's the only Sugar show I did see, so I don't know. I don't easily rank it off the top of my head, but it's definitely right up there at the top.
Well, I at the risk of we have some love in the room. I'm really digging the album, so I'm going to try to go out on a nice note. Although I'm going to drop in a little bit of passive aggressiveness here, which is we do have this off mic discussion about music of the 90s. And I do think, as far as decades go, the 90s are an underachiever. I am willing to recalculate some of that, because I do think the Copper Blue definitely is heavy in favor of the 90s. It's one of the highlights of the 90s for sure. Is it good enough to revive the decade? I'm not sure. I'm just not sure. But it's up there. It's definitely in the plus column.
See, my hot take on the 90s is if they're thought of as an underachiever as a decade, it's because a lot of people overlook albums like this, like Copper Blue. I think there are a lot of great overlooked albums in the '90s, and that's why I rank it. Like I don't, since the '60s, I don't really feel like there's an underachieving decade. I think I think that the '60s were an explosion that hasn't really died down yet. Um, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think the thing about the '90s is a lot of the stuff is buried that wasn't so much buried in the other decades.
Yeah, well, it's buried under Len's "Steal My Sunshine," and that's the problem.
Well,
I rest my case.
if that's what's on the surface, I can see why there's an issue.
Actually, you know what? That is totally disingenuous from me. I love "Steal My Sunshine," and I still listen to it. So I don't care. I don't care who knows it. I like the new Radicals. You get what you give too. I like One Headlight. Take that, Planet. You don't like it? Pound sand. Right. See, there we go. I blackpilled at the end, and I didn't want to, and I did it anyway. We were having such a good time, and then I spoiled it with the new Radicals. It's just
yeah. Well, since you mentioned One Headlight, though, this might be more. I don't know if this is more off show than on show, but I did just last week I watched Echo in the Canyon with Jacob Dylan. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
I'm aware of it. I haven't seen it.
Yeah, it was quite good.
The album.
It was pretty good. And he does a lot of Laurel Canyon covers with Beck and Cat Power and Regina Spektor and Nora Jones, and it was pretty good.
Well, again, we are on a collision course. We are eventually going to have to do the '90s show, but the fact that Copper Blue could have been kept out of radio by stuff like what is it, Your Woman by Whitetown or whatever, or Whiskey Town or whatever it is, like that album Copper Blue got buried under a bunch of alt novelty records, and I just view that as an indictment on the decade. But I underestimate
you're kind of conflating. I think you're conflating the later part of the decade and the earlier part of the decade. But I don't know. This is a discussion we have, and it's always very long. So we probably
all right. Well, let it go. But go back and listen to Dada's Disneyland and tell me I'm not onto something.
Well, okay, so let me try to condense this argument just for anybody that is interested.
I'm sorry. You don't even have to. I shouldn't have done it. I black-pilled everything.
I want to try to give my very brief synopsis of it, and you can have the last word on it if you wish.
I will let it go.
But basically, my take on our discussion of the '90s is that, like for me, I think of the '90s as like stuff like Copper Blue, stuff like Uncle Tubelo's Anodyne, and I like the Britpop movement, and these are things that you're not like these aren't the things that you think of the '90s as. So the way that you view the '90s and the way I view the '90s are based on entirely different albums. Like you're basing it off the one-hit wonders of the '90s, and so that's why we don't really see eye to eye on the decade is because we're basing our opinions on different artifacts from the '90s.
I don't disagree with that, but the fact that Spin Doctor's Two Princes has been played on the radio more times than all of Bob Mould's output combined, I just view as damnation on the '90s. That's all I can say.
Right, but you could by the same token, you could take something like why can't I think of so you could take like a Pat Boone song from the '60s, right? And you could base your opinion of the '60s on that. That to me, that's the same thing. So you shouldn't base the '90s on True Princes any more than you should base the '60s on Pat Boone or.
All right, I kind of concede the point to an extent, However, nobody thought Pat Boone was laying down real rock and roll. Like, he was a white shoe nerd, or he was not. I don't think he was taken seriously as an artist. Whereas Bob Mould, who is like one of the greatest songwriters of the 20th century, I think you could easily say that. Just I don't think that's really a debatable thing. Had to compete for oxygen with the Counting Crows. Like, it was a tragedy. And if Copper Blue got overshadowed, it was by Drek like Mr. Jones, and just crud, just absolute crud.
Well, you're going to make me defend Mr. Jones to an extent here, because I don't think that that's a bad song or anything. I think it's a song that got overplayed, and it's not one of my favorite songs from the 90s, so I don't want to be forced to rep too hard for it. But, you mentioned One Headlight. I think Mr. Jones is in that One Headlight sort of section of the night.
I shouldn't diss One Headlight. One Headlight's pretty good. It's no Steel, My Sunshine.
But it's, to me, Mr. Jones and One Headlight would be birds of a feather, because it's really the same thing. Those are two songs that just got way too overplayed.
The Gin Blossoms is better than them both, right?
Right. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's go out on a high note. We agree.
Yeah.
It would have been nice to hear If I Can't Change Your Mind.
What did you say? Because maybe we don't agree.
We talked. Look, Gin Blossoms. We talked about them last week. I wouldn't diss the Gin Blossoms. I thought they were good. It was a relief to hear that rather than have to listen to No Rain again.
Right. Well, Well, and I don't want to disrespect the dead either. I guess another sidebar. I saw Blind Melon open up for Neil Young in '93.
I like No Rain. It's the video I can't take. You know what it is? Yeah. I graduated college at the end of 1992. I moved back to Chicago and I listened to Q101. I think that 6 months of listening to Q101 and having to listen to, like, what was the Michael Penn song? The Someone to Dance With.
No Myth. Yeah. Are you going to diss that song? Please don't diss that song.
Bourgeois Tag, I think, was around then.
Wait. Let's go back. So hold on. Let's go back to Michael Penn, because I love No Myth. Love that song.
Did you love it while you were rocking the vote?
I don't know. I wasn't. I don't think I was old enough to vote yet.
Look, No Myth is fine. It's fine.
It's perfect. It's a great pop song.
It's just another one of these endless, generic 90s head bobber acoustic. It's brunch music.
Oh, okay. So stop. Don't trash No Myth. No Myth is like a perfect pop song.
I gave you we could have gotten out of this friendly and nice.
Yeah. Why did you have to ruin it?
If the hill you're going to die on is the artistic value of No Myth, I'm not going to fight you for that one. I'm going to let you have it.
The lyrics are so good. It's so tight. It's like just a great pop song. And by the way, Michael Penn went on to marry Amy Mann. So that's...
All right. If she vouches for him, then I take it back.
Yeah, that's an accomplishment there.
She ran circles around him, though. Her solo stuff during that decade should have been way more popular than No Myth.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, Michael Penn might have one great song. I don't know his catalog that well.
Yeah.
No Myth is great, though.
All right. I have no great songs. So on that point, you win. Go. I cannot critique Michael Penn because he did put one memorable song into the world, and I haven't done crap in that regard. So I will concede, and we can get out nice.
Yeah, well, and I do want to backtrack because, and this is a downer, and so we'll have to rescue ourselves.
All right. I have something for you. I can get us out of here on a high note. Keep going.
Well, okay, so here's my low note, but I did want to mention it since I talked about Blind Melon. So I saw Neil Young with Booker T and the MGs in 1993 in Chicago,
yep. Mm-hmm.
And Blind Melon was the first band on. Second band was Soundgarden, and then it was Neil Young and Booker T and the MGs. And so I, I, I don't want to explicitly talk about what the connection is between Blind Melon and Soundgarden, but I think you know what I'm getting at there.
And Neil Young. It's very Tonight's the Night, that bill.
What's that?
Yeah, there's some Neil Young connection too there with the death of Shannon Hoon. It's the drug overdose. It's there's something modeling about all of it, but I know that's not what you meant.
Well, right, yeah, but yeah, I mean, it's just like it's a downer to think about that. Like that's one of my favorite shows I ever went to because it was great seeing Neil with Booker T and the MGs, and I've talked about that before, so I won't talk about it again. But it's just like it's just a real downer to think about the two opening bands for that show.
Look, I'm gonna try to bring this back into the light, and I'm gonna give you the greatest gift you've ever received from me. I don't expect a thank you note or anything like that, but I've purged my '90s demon. I don't need to talk about the '90s one-hit wonders again. I was able to get off I was able to put my list of nefarious baddies out there, and I feel better now, and I don't have to bring it up. Well, I probably do have to bring it up again, but I'll try to wait a long time.
I am optimistic that someday we'll come to some kind of accord on the '90s. That's my hope. That's my hope for maybe 2020. Maybe we'll come out of that with that as a bright spot.
Well, the only way I think I can shut down this week is to just say LATER that beat. If I'm going to get my '90s stuff out, I'm going to get it all out now and ask, do you like butter tarts? I forget it. I'm sorry. Sorry I went down the Len. If it makes you feel better, there are actually two versions of Len Steal My Sunshine. One on the soundtrack to the movie Go, I believe, and one on their own album. They're equally as good. You should give them both a listen.
I hope Len's fan is listening to this so that.
Do you think it's possible to pay more than 50 cents for a used copy of Len's one record? I think I'm going to look up that. Yeah. Do you think if you tried to win a copy, I don't even remember the name of that Len album, but do you think you would have to pay? Is it possible to buy the Len album on eBay without paying more for shipping than the actual album?
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like the way that they always try to trick you with the shipping on eBay. I think if they're selling Len, like a Len CD, I think they would even forego that backdoor sort of shipping trick.
Well, that's true. I don't think they could pull it off. Before we go, but I'm going to look here and see if I can even find one autographed Len CD for sale. Wow, I'm just not seeing any. There are no autographed copies of the Len album available. Well, now you know what to get me for my birthday. All right, Mr. Flick, we haven't picked a show for next week as far as I know, but you know what episode that is. You know what
it is the Big 5-0.
That's a big deal.
That's a big deal, and it's not only our 50th show, but it will be our 1 year anniversary as well.
That's pretty amazing. Well, we were able to get Bob Mould and Big Star in before the end of the year. We got Neil Young done. We did the Beatles solo show. We haven't done the Who or the Rolling Stones. I'm not lobbying for either of those, but several of their albums are now getting close to 50 years old, or are 50 years old. Isn't Who's Next about to be 50 years old? Ooh, yeah, that's a good one. All right, anyway, yeah, I don't know what the next show is going to be, but we got to come correct for episode 50 on the 1 year anniversary, do we not?
Oh, well, I'm sure we will.
All right, I'm excited.
We'll come correct. We'll bring receipts. We'll take names.
And no 90s one-hit wonders. That's my solemn pledge to you.
That's right. And enough Len talk.
Enough Len talk, or your money back. That's the way I'll leave it. We'll see you then.
See you next week.